Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. It's really great to see so many people joining us for this webinar that is co-sponsored with AMSSM and the USOPC. And so today we're going to get a wonderful opportunity to hear about sports medicine pathways that various people have had from our various professions in sports medicine. So I won't list them all because I'll probably accidentally leave one out, and I would never want to do that because of all of our areas are so important to be able to support our athletes and all their needs. So I'm going to have two moderators that are helping me tonight. This, You'll see them in just a moment, but Dr. Chris Jordan and Dr. Lyndsey Booker are going to help with moderating of our panelists, and we're going to direct questions towards them so that they can answer ones that help them share about their pathway to help you learn that. We'll also have the chat available if you want to put questions in there. There's a lot of people and a lot of panelists, so we'll try our best to get to all those questions, but probably won't. And we'll hopefully maybe have another webinar so we can address those. I wanted to also take an opportunity to make sure to have our Dr. Mac Brown share a little bit from the USOPC, since this was a joint effort and coming together and a really exciting opportunity to be able to collaborate.
Thanks, Monique. Hi, everyone. It's nice to join you in this space tonight. As Monique said, this is a webinar we're putting on in partnership between AMSSM and USOPC. Monique and I have had the pleasure of working together on a working group within sports medicine at the USOPC, really looking at how we're providing holistic, well-rounded healthcare provision and inclusive care to all our Team USA athletes who represent such a diverse group of individuals and lived experiences. So one of the things that we want to continue to do is expand mentorship and pathways for folks that are looking to get into the field of sports medicine, especially for folks that are going to also support and reflect our Team USA community. So we have a number of great panelists that include my USOPC colleagues who I think the link worked. I just forwarded fast, so we should have everyone now, I hope. But anyone else on USOPC team, feel free to ping me if we need to send that out to any others. But yeah, we're really excited to join this space. We know there's going to be a lot of questions, and really hope to get to as many of them as we can for you all. And so if you have something, you can drop it in the chat. We're going to have Q&A at the end, and we just know that with almost 80 people already on the call so far, it's probably going to be really hard for us to get to all questions. We'll do our best. Monique, back to you.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to be able to now turn it over to two of my colleagues, Dr. Lyndsey Booker and Dr. Chris Jordan, who have kindly agreed to moderate this session. And so how it's going to work tonight is that they have some questions that we're hoping will help really answer some of the most important things that we think you might want to know. And they're going to direct them to certain panelists and give you guys some time to share. And then we'll kind of move through our various panelists and then again, put things into the chat. And at the end, hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. And panelists, feel free that if you want to adapt the question a little bit to something that you feel like may be better suited for you to answer or you wanted to share, then go ahead and do that. I'm going to try to pop up your picture when you're speaking that has a little information about you on there. So yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to Lyndsey and Chris. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, and welcome everybody. And we're so glad to have the amazing group of panelists for this evening. We just want to start off with a question I think a lot of people have is, how did people get to this career path and how did they find their way on this journey? And we want to hear from different panelists from different disciplines within sports medicine. But I'll direct the first question and start off with Dr. Finoff. If you would maybe tell us a little bit about your path and what inspired you for this career.
For sure. So it's great to see everybody here. And Monique and Mac, thanks very much for inviting me. So my name is John Finoff. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And my path was literal circuitous. So when I was growing up in Colorado, I was not I was a reasonable student, but I didn't really care much about school, and just loved sports, and probably like many of the people on this call. And thankfully, I was gifted enough to get up to the professional level. And so I figured that I was going to just be a professional athlete for my career. And when I retired, I would transition into the sports industry. I was a mountain bike racer, and so I figured I'd be in the bike industry. But one day when I was riding home from going to school at CU here in Boulder, I came across a person who had shot themselves in the head. So they'd committed suicide. They were still alive when I found them. And I called 911, but by the time the ambulance arrived, the person had passed away, and I had no medical training whatsoever. And so I just stood there and waited for the ambulance. And after all that happened, obviously it was really traumatic. And I was like, man, I need to know some basic first aid so that if something like this happens again, then I'll be ready to intervene and to do my best to try to help that individual. And being in mountain bike racing, which is quite dangerous, I figured it would be really relevant to my sport. So I took an EMT course and I loved it. And I was like, holy cow, I think I've found what I really want to do. And so changed my major and and went into medicine. And the rest is, I can talk about my path from there, but that's what got me into medicine, and sports medicine in particular was because of my sports background. But I'll turn it back to you, Lyndsey.
Thank you so much. That's definitely an inspiring story to see how you got to where you are now. Thanks for sharing that with us. We also have Dr. Ed Jackson, who's on with us as well. And Dr. Jackson, we would ask the same of you. What sort of inspired your journey, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I was running wild and crazy in high school, doing all the things that high schoolers do. And one of the head football coach at that time said, "Hey, man, you want to come and work with the football team?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about? I ain't playing ball. My mom and daddy don't want me to do that." So he said, "Yeah, come be our trainer." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not really, I'm a cool guy. I don't really want to carry no water around for a bunch of dudes, man." And so he was like, "Well, come learn something about this thing of sports medicine and athletic training." And so, my mom and dad were very academically inclined. So they said, "We will support you as long as it's in academia and you can mesh, sports with it." And so, long story short, I kind of started learning about athletic training and sports medicine, and started in high school. Was the head student trainer in high school for all the different sports, football, and went to college on a scholarship for athletic training at Florida State. And then I realized that I don't know if I wanted to work that hard and those long hours. And then I started to see that even when the trainers couldn't figure out what was going on, or things got whatever too complex, they ended up going to the doctors. And I'm like, whoa, there's a group of people, like doctors specifically for this group of individuals. And I was like, well, I want to do that. And so I wanted to be the individual that kind of solved the problem. And then I had to figure out I wanted to be the individual that actually fixed the structures that were torn and busted up. And so that's how I kind of navigated my way to medicine, to orthopedic surgery, and sports medicine.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson. And you really touched on a couple things, right? You talked about your journey, but also some of the other professions within sports medicine. So I want to turn the question over to Nixon. Nixon is an athletic trainer. He works with me at Notre Dame. And the same type of question to you, Nixon. How did you land on athletic training, and kind of walk us through your path to get there?
Okay, how I ended up in athletic training. So I'm originally from the Bahamas, and they don't have athletic. Well, when I was growing up, they didn't have athletic training per se. It was just uh, you went to the clinic, or that you went to the surgeon, but there was no formal athletic training. So I get to America, And I just remember getting hurt one day, and I was crying and telling my coach, I said, I want to run 146. I came on a track scholarship, so I was just like, I want to run 146. And coach just pulled me. He's like, kid, you can impact sports in so many ways besides just being on the track, you know? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm 17 at the time. I was like, what? I didn't understand what he was talking about. But anyways, fast forward, I got to Park University. They had an athletic training program. I was like, okay, I'll go do that. Now, this is what I want to do, you know? So since I was hurt, I remember this lady, she took care of me and helped me out. She was an athletic trainer. So I was like, maybe I should do this. So anyways, after I got that opportunity to get into the program, I actually graduated and moved back to Bahamas. So as I'm about to start a job, I don't remember what the job was at the hospital. I got a call, and the call was to the call was, hey, Texas Tech has a athletic training program. This was my mentor. This is actually my mentor in undergrad. He's like, I think you'll be good at it. You should give it a shot. And I was supposed to start work that that Monday. I got the call on Monday. So I called the hospital on Monday. I was like, hey, I'm not coming. I'm moving to Texas. So anyways, I just packed up and got to Texas Tech Health Sciences Center. And then while I got to grad school, I just remember this is how I actually got my first job. A bunch of students were hurt for the track team. And I just remember looking, and I was like, why is nobody taking care of these students? So anyways, I just went in on my own. I was like, hey, can I work with these students? I got them all healthy. We go on that end of the year, we won Big 12 championship. And, coach turned to me and was like, we're not here without you. And then anyways, they created a position for me, and I was the first ever athletic trainer with Texas Tech track and field. And then from there, I got into basketball. So that's kind of how that's the abbreviated version. I really condensed it.
Thank you for that story. I'm just fascinated by just the unique ways in which people have found themselves going down this path. And so just one more kind of backstory. I want to pose this question to Dr. Gunter. If you could tell us a little bit about how you got into sports from the psychology standpoint.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. So I was an athlete growing up. So that's kind of how I got into the sport world. Swimming was my first sport, actually, but then I shifted to basketball. In terms of this area of psychology, that was my academic first love. I kind of fell in love with psychology during my Psych 101 class in undergrad. And to be truly, completely honest and transparent, I went to college thinking, though, that I was going to do physical therapy, until I took organic chemistry, and it did its job and weeded me right out. And I went back to my love of psychology. And so I graduated from undergrad with a bachelor's in psychology. And through my kind of master's program, I initially wanted to do forensics. If any of you have seen Silence of the Lambs, I wanted to be Clarice. But after getting a master's in forensic, I realized that I was missing I realized that I didn't want to be at the intersection of psychology and the law for the rest of my career, because I knew that would have an impact on me. And it was really through speaking with one of my mentors at the time, a psychiatrist who was working at the prison, who mentioned the field of sports psychology. She said, what do you love? And I said, I love sport. I love psychology. And she said, there is this field that exists that combines the two. And so it was truly when I was finishing my master's program, trying to figure out what was next, that I stumbled upon the field of sports psychology and pursued my doctorate work in clinical psychology with a concentration in sports. So I fell in love with psychology first, I would say, from an academic standpoint. But once I learned that there was an academic field and a profession that allowed us to blend the two, I was sold and pursued that as my graduate coursework, and kind of have been in the field ever since, working in college settings, private practice, and currently in pro sports. So I'm grateful to the psychiatrist in the prison who introduced me to a field that has become, feels more like a calling, and has become a huge part of the work and the spaces that I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Gunter, for sharing that with us. It's really cool to see how your own experiences as an athlete yourself sort of carved away. And I think that's true for a lot of providers and people that work in the sports medicine world as well. So that's really awesome to hear that. I was going to direct our next question to some of our physical therapists that are on the call. I see that we have Olivia Rowland, and I wanted to ask, what is one of the more memorable experiences that you've had over your career thus far? And are there specific mentors that have sort of helped you get to the area that you're in now?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia Rowland. I'm a physical therapist at the US Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. So definitely have had a lot of mentorship to get to where I am now. I did a residency and a fellowship, and so had a lot of people helping and supporting me along the way. I think one of the most impactful moments and teaching moments that a mentor gave to me one time was they said, can you list 3 good things that you did for every wrong thing that you think you did? Because I feel like as a student and a mentee, we're so hard on ourselves and we know everything that we did wrong and we just fixate on that. And then we start to spiral into feeling not so good about what we're doing. And for them to really highlight that, hey, you need to recognize the good things that you're doing as well, that really put in perspective and boosted some of the confidence. Because I know even as a young clinician, or if you're just getting into the field, there's a lot of that imposter syndrome and feeling like, hey, maybe I don't belong here. But as you're starting to move on, you trust your training, know that you know what you're talking about, and it really helps you grow as a clinician. So one of the more memorable moments, I've had a lot of very cool experiences and opportunities to be able to travel with professional sport and Olympic and Paralympic sport. So I think one of the coolest things I got to go to was Wimbledon. I got to go on center court. So that was definitely one of the coolest experiences that I've had. Nerve-wracking to say the least, but also very memorable too, and some cool pictures.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to go the complete other direction. You talked a little bit about just being hard on yourself. I'm going to direct this question at Dr. Waters. What would you say has been one of the bigger challenges or obstacles you feel like you've had to overcome to reach your goal and your profession at this level?
Well, hi everyone. So I'm Jen Waters. I am both a chiropractor and an acupuncturist. And so I would say probably for me personally, one of my biggest challenges is actually having the dual hats. So I wouldn't go back in time and change it. I absolutely love doing both things. I love having the Western medicine of the chiropractic and the Eastern medicine of the acupuncture. And I believe that really allows me a wide skill set in which to treat athletes. But navigating that within myself, within working with other people, I've previously been in private practice, and even just working with teams sometimes when they're looking for explicit things. I think having the dual skill set can actually be more difficult at times. So that would be my biggest challenge personally, kind of a unique one that doesn't hit a lot of people, but.
In the same vein, do you feel that having both backgrounds allowed you to maybe stand out and possibly open up opportunities for you that you have now?
That's absolutely correct. So I think one of the main reasons why I am able to work here with the USOPC is because of the dual credential. I did take over for someone that happened to have the exact same skill set, which is pretty unique. I'm in the state of California, and there's not a lot of us dually licensed in both, just due to the educational requirements that it has. So it has opened up a lot of doors, and sometimes people are looking for someone that has multiple skill sets. And so you can get 2 birds with 1 stone, literally, and it can open quite a few doors that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Waters. I will direct this next question to Dr. Mesador, who's also a chiropractor as well. And I was just curious to know, in the course of your career, like what's one piece of advice that you would give to yourself or someone that's sort of starting at the beginning of this process about the journey ahead?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Rode. I'm in Orlando, Florida. This is a labor of love, and you're truly serving. And I think it's something that you always have to remember. I love serving the athletes. They become family members, they become friends. Watching them train for years and making a team is so monumental to them. And the fact that you're a part of that journey, you celebrate with them, you cry with them. So I think for me, it's just changed emotionally. And I think that's something that they love. Sometimes I call them kids, or, they call me auntie, because you do build that relationship and trust with them and with their coaches. I think that's something that I will always carry with me.
Thank you so much. I want to direct this next question to Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims, for someone who is a medical student and they are wanting to pursue a career in sports medicine, what are some opportunities that they may be able to seek out at that level of training, or even maybe as an undergrad, that you think might serve them better as they continue on in the profession?
I think a few things that are important is, one, having an open mind. You want to have a sense of the direction that you want to go in, but you want to be open. What I do love about our sports medicine profession is that there are so many ways to get here, whether it's through medicine or physical therapy, rehabilitation, chiropractic, dentistry, you name it, psychiatry, psychology. And there are many people who start on a particular pathway and build on a dual specialty. I pursued emergency medicine as a means to get to primary care sports medicine, but I could have chose PM&R, I could have chose internal medicine, pediatrics. So keep that curiosity going as you enter into medical school. Remember, grades are important. Building relationships with people in your specialty is important. You need to find mentors. You need to build a strong work ethic. At the end of the day, in sports, we say in conventional wisdom that the best ability is availability. I tend to think in medicine that our visibility becomes our credibility. And so you want to be seen, you want to be present, you want to impact not just yourself, but others. You know that you've mastered material when you can teach it to others. And so you want to seek out opportunities to master your material, whatever it is that you're studying. Anatomy, pathology, physiology, all those things matter. So you're going to have to read, you're going to have to grind, but you're also going to have to be present. Being present means not just showing up on time. It means coming early. It means staying a little bit later. Those are the things that are going to be important to ultimately building up your compendium of information and skills to be the most successful practitioner that you can be. And those are some of the things that I took away from mentorship that I received.
Thanks for sharing those pearls, for the sort of beginning point as a medical student, how to work your way to where you are now. I wanted to direct our next question to Dr. Scott. Sort of piggybacking off of that, you're starting off as a medical student as you make your way through training, and eventually you're a sports medicine, primary care sports medicine physician. What does that day look like for you? What do people have to look forward to in their career?
Yeah, no, so it's amazing. Also piggybacking off of what Dr. Sims said, I mean, there's so many different pathways that you can take, especially as a primary sports medicine physician. All the different pathways you can go on. I am a family medicine provider who now practices sports medicine in New York City at HSS. But, we have my emergency medicine colleagues, my PM&R colleagues, my internal medicine colleagues. So I think there's so many different ways in which it can look for you. There's some people who are out in the community and they're kind of the person who's still practicing primary care, but also have that sports medicine knowledge. Or again, someone like me who not doing as much primary care anymore, and I have mainly a sports medicine practice. But the nice part about, I think, the way that the field has moved is that there's just so many different ways in which it can look like, in addition to practicing sports medicine, I get to take care of the NICS, and I recently took over as the chief of our service, so have an admin role as well.
Thank you. I want to direct this next question to the dietitian that we have on. So this question is for Alicia Glass. And the question is, in sports dietetics, it's an evolving field. And I'm just very curious, as you started to go down that path, what was the most impactful thing that you kind of experienced that led you to pursue a career in sports dietetics?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So good to see so many familiar faces. So yeah, my job as a sport dietitian in the Olympic movement it's definitely changed over the years, but I think most athletes and most practitioners can admit they've had an aha moment in sport nutrition where it's like they ate something and they felt a certain way and it made them kind of contemplate some of their decisions. But then also too, I think one of the best parts of working in sport is that is a primary motivator for athletes to really kind of reflect on. It's not just food, it should be fuel that really is going to help them achieve their goals. So I think, kind of reflecting with athletes on kind of where they're starting from, we're all products of our environment, whether it be coming straight from home or maybe you've been at a university that has various resources. But the athletes that we work with are really transitioning to, they're in one environment and a lot of times they're transitioning into new ones. And I think athletes are empowered when they realize they need to be adaptable. I think realizing athletes are all starting from different places and meeting them where they are, but encouraging them to be students. I've been talking about how nutrition is a science. And because it's a science, it's always evolving, and being open to if a new research study is released, let's look at it. How do we apply it? And what's this mean as an elite athlete? So I think the aha moments, but then being students of the trade.
Thank you. I definitely have had my fair share of aha moments as well. I'm going to transition this question back to Dr. Jackson. There was a question in the chat about barriers, and I'm just curious, in orthopedics, obviously a competitive specialty, what were some of the barriers that you faced or had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Ooh, boy, that's Pandora's box there. Hope y'all ready. One of the things about orthopedics that you got to understand is we're kind of the worst specialty when it comes to representation for underrepresented minorities. And so me personally, I am usually the only guy that looks like me in the room. And so that was my first barrier to kind of jump through, is I really didn't have much representation to look at, to be able to talk to someone who comes from the same cultural dynamics that I came from. And so I had to adapt, I had to kind of put myself in the majority's kind of culture, if you will. And that kind of, bit me a little bit because I was naive to some of the things that were going on around me. I think the biggest thing that is the barrier nowadays is there is a generation that is above me that makes it very, very difficult for people to enter into this space. They are very, very territorial in allowing younger providers, and again, I guess the question is orthopedics, so for sure orthopedics, they are afraid of their shadow. They do not want anybody messing around on their turf. And so it becomes very hard to try to get in to these spaces when it comes to collegiate athletic care and above. And so there are some people, and I will call a name because he has done an excellent job of going about this in the opposite direction of what I'm describing, which is my mentor, Dr. John Zoroyans, or Dr. X. And so there is a significant component of collaboration, communication, clarity about what does it look like to work together as a team. I believe that sports medicine and orthopedics is no longer a one-person show. I believe there needs to be a team of orthopedists working together, bouncing ideas off of one another so that we all can cover each other's back. And I hope that the next generation of us that are coming through, that we create a better dynamic for the younger provider to come in and work on the team and get away from this, kind of fraternity-esque, keeping people out. Don't mess with my thing. This is what has built my career and all this other kind of stuff. So from an orthopedic sports medicine standpoint, that is a huge barrier that's really not talked about, is not spoken about, because people want to disguise it as, well, you need to break your chops, right? You need to get more face time. No, that's not what it is. You don't want to play well in the sandbox because you don't want anybody else on your turf. So I think we got to call it what it is. And we're not trying to, like, I'm not trying to kick Dr. X out of his place. He's deserved to be in his place, right? But let's have a conversation about what it looks like to work well on a team and have clarity. And he has done that. I have been a part of other teams. That does not happen. And it gets very frustrating sitting in the wings when you don't know where you're going.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson. You highlighted an amazing point about the collaboration and the effort of the team. I think it's great to have so many people here from so many different disciplines because it doesn't work well without having that sort of team surrounding everybody. So kind of I want to transition a little bit, but also direct the same sort of question to Maurice Henderson, who is a massage therapist who works with USOPC. Maurice, could you tell us a little bit about your path and then also about any sort of barriers and how you've overcome them as well?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lyndsey. My pathway was interesting as a massage therapist. I've always heard that when the opportunity presents itself for you to be able to provide a high level of massage therapy to whatever athlete or whatever person that you're dealing with, that you just need to be ready for the opportunity to present itself, because there isn't really a clear pathway from massage therapy into the professional sports realm. My route happened. I was working at a hotel spa, and a WNBA player came in to shoot a commercial. My spa director was really adamant about this particular athlete coming and working with me on a regular basis, and she had just happened to have a shoulder surgery. And so I was one of those ambitious massage therapists that was willing to work on that shoulder and get into some of the nitty gritty of what she had going on. And she told me directly, she said, you know what, after today, I'm going to do my best to make sure that you get on one of the sports teams here with the WNBA. And 2 years later, after her working in Russia for 2 seasons, she gave me, the team, the Washington Mystics, ended up giving me a call and asked if I could report to sports medicine. So one of the things that, it wasn't a direct pathway, but it was just like, as a massage therapist, because we are in the care continuum, but we still, the research still isn't there to show that, massage therapy makes that big of an impact on athletics or, high performance environments. Although the athletes, they do utilize massage therapists on a regular basis, the research just isn't there to support what type of impact we're actually having. So there isn't a direct pathway, but you just need to make sure you're ready when your number's called, make sure that your skill set is dialed in, and what you can know about sports massage, you really want to make sure that you are one of the best in that space so that when that opportunity presents itself. As far as the barriers are concerned, again, just going back to just the research that's available right now, if there were, and I don't even know where that starts at, is a massage therapist are they supposed to do the research to find out what impact we're having, or is that left to the greater community of clinicians to provide that information? That's one of the things that right now, I mean, I've had that discussion with a number of high-level clinicians within the clinic that I work at the training center here in Colorado Springs. And then, on the ground level back in DC where I'm at, I talk to my friends who are massage therapists, and we're just waiting for that groundbreaking information to hit the main line where everybody's like, hey, listen, this is what massage therapy does. And now we can quantify it based on the science, right? So, some of my colleagues have given me opportunities to present information that what I could gather up to this point. And so I'm really appreciative of those opportunities. But again, the barriers right now to massage therapists entering the sports realm, the professional sports realm, is that there just isn't enough research to say that, yes, we have an impact, and this is exactly the impact that we're having. But if a person's interested in getting into that space as a massage therapist and getting into the professional sports realm, all I can tell you is just make sure that when your number's called, make sure that when someone gets on your table that can change your trajectory, that you're ready for that opportunity and that you do a good job. Because right now, there's opportunities that present themselves, but just to be in that space where you're a high level clinician when it comes to sports massage, I feel like that's the most impactful thing you could do. Just be ready when that opportunity presents itself.
Thank you, Maurice. I think that is great advice as far as, just staying ready, and you never know when that opportunity will come up. I want to direct this next question to Jerica Thomas. Jerica is a physical therapist. I've had the pleasure of working with her with USA Track and Field, but she's certainly done a lot in this profession, and would really love for her to share just a little bit about her story and how she got into physical therapy and what she's doing today.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for that intro. My name is Jerica Thomas. I'm currently living in Las Vegas, Nevada. My trek to physical therapy wasn't the result of some athletic injury, compared to a lot of my counterparts. My mom died when I was 8 years old, and I was able to witness her go through physical therapy, and just the experience that she had with having someone come in and motivate her and like pour into her and help her get through a difficult time. I kind of fell in love with that. And so as I aged, I realized that my best friend's mom was a physical therapist, and I was able to shadow her and fall in love with the care of people on the spectrum, from the regular civilians to athletes to special needs to women, men, like the whole gamut. I ended up going to school in Arkansas for PT school, undergrad at Louisiana Monroe. And from there, I just kind of bounced around to different clinics working. So I think one thing I did early in my career was make sure that I was around a lot of mentors for my first few jobs. So I had opportunities to go to different places, to be like one or two clinicians in the building. I decided to go to Campbell Clinic in Memphis, South Haven area. And I was adamant about learning all I could while I was there. And so they had this opportunity to learn about splinting, fabricating splints and orthotics. And I just immersed myself in that and became a sponge and just kind of picked up from all of the mentors that we had in the building. And then from there, I thought that I wanted to stay in the nursing home, stay in the outpatient clinic, but I couldn't run from sports. I did sports in college, did sports in high school, and I was just pulled back into that arena. I moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I worked there. And I was able to work a little bit with athletes outside of work. So I did a lot with track athletes there. And just my passion for helping people and encouraging people and being curious. Like Dr. Sim said, like curiosity will really help you improve your career or improve your craft, right? So I just made sure that I wanted to be the best at what I did for the people I was doing it for. I wanted to see them have big changes in their lifetime. And then that allowed me to just, again, just kind of like flows through the sports industry. So focus on my craft. I work with athletes in my spare time, and I just kept volunteering from there and ended up in the track space, and then that turned into the basketball space.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for sharing that with us.
No worries.
I'm going to transition this next question to Dr. Amawasi. As a sports psychologist, very interested to know, like, how did you choose becoming a sports psychologist over other specialties within the sports realm? Like, what was it about sports psychology for you?
Great question. Actually, it wasn't sports psychology. I went to school to be a school psychologist. My dream was to work in the schools for 25 years, be that local legend that just helped children matriculate and work with their children. But when I did my internship, I started to work in the correctional facilities. When I worked in the correctional facilities, unfortunately, it was disproportionately placed with individuals who looked like me. That internship turned into a postdoc. That postdoc turned into a job. And when I started doing it, unfortunately, this is when I first started working with military veterans and with former athletes. So I would see people who would bring back like these accolades of the past, of what they used to be, of what they could have been and whatnot, but then something had derailed them. And so one of the things I tried to do in my community, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I said, you know what, I'm going to start a little local cable, access TV shows. It was anything big, but I knew it was three things I could get to my community. I could get them information that they could relate to. It would be free, and they didn't have to leave their house. And so just through all of this time, people just started to see you on television. And so I worked not only in the correctional facilities and the schools, I also worked at Children's Hospital, where I worked in the trauma department, where I worked with CPS. So I'm talking about physically, sexually, emotionally abused children, something so far away from the world of sports. But as all of the colleagues have said before, it's amazing how your journey leads to different places. I get a call out of the blue from the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's where I met my man Nixon. It's so good to see you, Nixon. This is where I met Nixon. When I came in, Nixon, I was so green. Not only did I not know pro sports, I didn't know sports. I knew psychology, and that's what they had brought me in for. But once you're starting to get inside of it, you get to meet people like Dr. Ken Zagunner, like Dr. Chris Carr, and they start to pull you around, and you start to learn different things. And then because we're forever students, you go into studying and you want to be good with your craft. But I think what gave me an advantage in sport is because I had this intersection of all of these other things at the intersection of life. So when I met with the athletes, I could meet with them on different things besides just the performance, really in the clinical things that hit to the heart of them. And so when we talk about this, even now to this day, I make sure that I keep so much of my practice outside of the realm of sport. So I keep my feet kind of like in the regular land, so you kind of can understand, but you can touch them in different ways. So like we all said, everybody has different routes. And if something is for you, it comes for you. Like I said, I was literally in my mother's house when I got a call to come in for an interview. And I was like, did you get the right person? I actually tried to talk them out of hiring me in the interview because I just didn't think I was set for it. But it's amazing when you have the aptitude, the skill set, and being a former athlete, you can relate in different ways. When you pull all of those things in together, your passion and desire, you recognize you can do a whole lot more than what you originally set out to do. And so I did just come into sports psychology to get back to your question.
Thank you for that great answer. I feel like I've been inspired just from listening to that, and you were definitely meant for your specialty because that was powerful. So thank you. I want to direct this next question to John Faltis. John is a physical therapist and athletic trainer. I know for myself, I had an athletic training background and ended up pursuing medicine. I'm curious to hear from John why he chose to get both athletic training and then move on to physical therapy as opposed to maybe some other subspecialty within sports medicine. So if you could answer that question for us, John.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for the question and for having me on the panel today. Kwaku is always a tough act to follow. I'm very fortunate to be a colleague with him. So really excited to share everyone's story today. I was fortunate in that before I even entered college, I knew I wanted to work in a sports medicine space. I had mentors in high school, again, back to mentors again. an opportunity to work at a hospital with physical therapists. My mom was a nurse at the time and worked very closely with orthopedic physical therapists. So that was my first exposure into the world of physical therapy. From mentors, they recommend I pursue that first. And during the time that I was in physical therapy school, I had opportunities to work in a sports performance environment as well as professional sports setting. And that kind of set me on that path of seeking out dual credentialed licensure. So throughout all those experiences, I not only was able to get the opportunity to work alongside physical therapists, athletic trainers, but also strength coaches, nutritionists, and mental health providers. And decided that when I finished PT school, I was going to work for a couple of years, end up being shorter than that. I was fortunate to be able to do a grad assistantship as an athletic trainer and still gain physical therapy experience, not so much in the sports setting, but in an acute hospital setting. And I can't tell you how valuable those skills. I know a few of the other speakers have touched on that, but getting experience in different settings not only opens up your eyes to different clinical skill sets, but patients of different ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, beliefs. And I think that really set me up for different opportunities that came down the road, in particular now with the USOPC, but also in an international medical type setting with performance medicine. So that was kind of my pathway, but I've gone down a lot of different routes to get where I'm at now. And I'm incredibly grateful for, again, those mentors that guided me along that path of seeking out that dual credential athletic and physical therapy education.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for sharing that with us. Really cool to hear about all the different aspects of your journey, for sure. I wanted to direct this next question to Jenna Wilkerson, who's also an athletic trainer, and just hearing about your path as well, and how you've gotten to this point in your career.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm an athletic trainer with the USOPC. So thank you everyone for joining this evening. My path I knew in high school when I was exposed to the profession of athletic training initially to that it actually existed due to my experiences with my high school athletic trainer. She saw my interest in it and actually shared with me internship opportunities and like even a high school athletic training camp available in the state of Michigan to just expose to the profession to test it out and see if it's what I wanted to pursue. I was pretty determined going through college. So I went into Michigan State, did 4 years there in and out with my degree in athletic training, but also my background, my family, my parents, my grandparents are all involved in education, professors, teachers, principals. So I actually got my master's degree in educational leadership and policy analysis, just to keep the doors open, but also to be able to keep my hand in the education side to continue my personal education, but also to help educate others and be aware of that educational system as well. After my master's degree, I was informed of the opportunity of a fellowship with USOPC at that time, and I had applied for that fellowship and was very fortunate at the end of my fellowship with the USOC at the time that a full-time staff position opened up, and I like to joke around, but they haven't kicked me out yet. I've been with the USOPC for the past 17 years, but during my time here, I've had many different roles, responsibilities, different job titles. Some are more educational heavy, some are more administrative heavy, but always a clinician working with the athletes day in, day out. So I was able to be very determined and had my mind pretty set, but I did not see myself ending here for my career. I thought this would be a one-year position, but I was glad to have my pathway kind of penciled out in pencil and was able to adjust to any changes or any unique opportunities when they present themselves. So I was able to adjust my pathway and my goals when the opportunities presented.
Thank you, Jenna. I was going to even say, even from my early career as a sports medicine physician, your educational background definitely has carried through. I remember learning from you at the USOPC conference last year. And so you're doing an awesome job, and it's great to see you here.
Thank you.
So I want to touch on a question from the chat. I'm going to direct this question back to Dr. Gunter. The question is really regarding racial and ethnic disparities. So, you know, how do you see that play out working where you work, seeing, you know, athletes and individuals from across the country? Please tell us a little bit more, share us about that experience for you.
Yeah, sure. Mac responded in the chat, and so I will build off of the response that they placed there as well. But in thinking about the disparities, particularly in sports psych and clinical psychology, I'll add both. So when I entered the field, it was primarily a field that was dominated by white men on the sports psych side and by white women on the clinical psych side. That was just the statistics. Like there were not, thinking about how diverse sport is, there was just not that same level of diversity reflected in the professionals that were entered into this space. And so that certainly is one of the things that has continued to be a challenge, I would say, in the field, because what we know is that having practitioners and providers who have a level of cultural competence, having practitioners and providers who have shared identities with some of the athletes that they serve, like that can increase culturally competent, culturally responsive care to help minimize some of those disparities that we see, right? And so thinking through the ways in which we continue to create pathways through the educational system for folks to have access to this education in order to then become professionals in this space is one of the things that we continue to work on. And so I would say in my time in the field, there has been an increase as it relates to racial diversity in terms of providers. We still have a way to go, but there have been some strides there. But also thinking about other areas of diversity beyond just racial and ethnic disparities, thinking about disparities and thinking about the way in which culture plays a role and a part in everything we do. So thinking about sexual identity, thinking about religion, thinking about the global landscape of sport, right? And so thinking about from an international perspective, what are we doing in those ways to ensure that the services we're providing and the things that we're doing are meeting people where they are across the globe, right? I think that's something that we really have to be mindful of. And so I'll acknowledge from my own experience, it was when I first entered the field back in the early 2000s as a grad student, there were many times in which I questioned whether or not there was space for me in this field of sports psychology or in this field of clinical psychology, because you would look around and there were not people who looked like you. And so I stepped away from the field for about 8 years. Like I was doing the clinical work, I was working in college counseling centers, I was truly doing my thing and really enjoying that. And I wondered whether or not the sports space was a space for me because it felt so challenging and so difficult to be in the space. But what I will say is what I feel like I've tried to do in the last several years of my career is be the representation that I didn't see when I was coming up as a student. So I saw a couple of folks and they kind of grounded me. Like I have to give a shout out to Margaret Otley, Dr. Margaret Otley, who was present. Dr. Wendy Ballaby was a peer of mine, but she was there. Dr. Ross Flowers was also someone who I saw repeatedly in spaces. And so I've tried to show up in ways not only to represent for those who look like me or who may share an identity that I have, but to create room for any and everyone who wants to be in this field. And so I think we have to be really cognizant of that, that we work in the world of sport and performance, but we work with people. And I think sometimes that can be missed for the business element of it, the entertainment element of it, the cool factor of it. But the reality is that we're working with people. And so thinking about the ways in which we can acknowledge and respect their humanity and their humanness, in which we can create opportunities for equity and fairness, in which we can create space, I think is a way we try to address some of those disparities. And that's not only in the work we do, but it's also in thinking about the pathways for the professionals and the people who are interested to enter into this lane. And so finding mentors, creating training opportunities, responding when students reach out via email to just answer the questions, because there are no guidelines and no places that say this is the path you take. So just trying to create open lanes so that more people who want to be in this space can see a pathway to get here.
Thank you so much. That's such amazing advice. And I think that all of us are really feeling that. I see a lot of people shaking their head. And I was just coming back on to, for one, thank my moderators so far, as they have been doing such an amazing job. But also, we still have some time. And I think we've heard from all the panelists. If you're a panelist and we skipped you, please chime in. We're going to move on to the kind of Q&A part of this discussion. And we had a lot of questions come through when people registered. So we'll look at some of those. But if you're like there's some kind of type of question that you're really wanting to know, then we're watching the chat. We'll put that in there. and we'll spread that to the panelists. So we'll kind of move forward there. I just wanted to share, kind of like inspired also by what the conversation has been going on, just that role of mentorship and how I think it's such a critical part of like how we get to where we are and then how we can contribute in the future. And so I think of people who were there for me as friends, as colleagues, as mentors who helped me to move along to where I am in my career. And I remember a couple years ago when we were at our sports medicine conference, listening to one of our presenters talk about their now role of mentorship and helping other people. And so that really kind of like touched upon me. And I'm like looking at the faces here, and I'm also like feeling like I keep on sending messages to Chris and Lyndsey, Dr. Jordan, Dr. Booker, just of like how impressed I am by them and as people who I've gotten to meet as younger people in their career, and how amazing they're doing. That like there's a point I think where it's really important, like how you find those mentors and how you let the someone once said, like, how you let the mentor who believes in you, you believe the mentor who believes in you, even if you're thinking, how do you believe in me this way? Like, believe somebody when they want to mentor you. And then when it's your turn, and that happens all along the way, because there always will be people coming up, then how you can serve as a mentor as well. And to be able to encourage people to continue to pursue their dreams and helping them in their way. So that's kind of, I just wanted to throw that in there. And then now I'm turning it back over to Lyndsey and to Chris to continue really asking some questions of our group. And I think we might throw one your way, Mac, because we're trying to be respectful of your space, but maybe we will just throw in there. Oh, with baby, amazing. So maybe I'll step there for a moment. Like, where do you see mentorship in your role, and people maybe who have mentored you, and advice to the group around like finding mentors and being a mentor and supporting others to reach their career goals?
I love that question, and I hope that the chatter from the wee little one is at a minimum for the moment, or Zoom does a good job of tuning her out. But I mean, also as a parent, like I'm mentoring this little tiny being and growing up. But I would attribute a lot of my journey to the field, and especially to where I work now with USOPC and all my amazing colleagues there, all my amazing colleagues within the sports psych world. It wouldn't have happened without mentors along the way, and support and guidance, and learning from the mentors, not necessarily using them as this is absolutely how I have to do it, because everyone's got their own path and journey and strengths and assets that you can bring into the spaces that you go into, personally and professionally. But it was really valuable to just hear the way that we're hearing everyone speak to tonight, like what their journey was, what helped them, what helped them understand kind of their professional identities and strengths, and just then being able to kind of start thinking and seeing like, well, how would I fit in that space, or what could I bring if I were working in that space, or how might I do it slightly differently based on what I'm hearing. And that way I could kind of help to what I heard earlier about kind of like evolving the space and playing in the sandbox collaboratively and in a really like strength-based way, and using different and diverse perspectives to be able to again create a tapestry of really incredible care. Like, that's the stuff that I got out of mentorship, and I do very firmly believe in about paying that forward. So because I feel like I've heard this theme across many people that having folks to talk to and talk through like how you want to get to where you want to go, super helpful. Having folks that you can identify with and seeing them in spaces that you want to be in, super powerful. Be that for someone younger than you that's up and coming as well. And stay in touch with mentors. Like, those are people and relationships, and they're investing in you as a person, and they believe in you as a person. So keep those relationships going long term, would be some of the things that I would say before more chatter comes through the airwaves.
Awesome. Thank you, Mac. Appreciate it. And it's just amazing. It just shows like the versatility and being able to, have wear multiple hats, dad, and here joining the panel and still be able to keep focused. So commend you for that. I think being a parent in a lot of these different fields can come with its challenges as well, like having to navigate both your home life as well as your life through work. And I know Jen and I talked a little bit about this, but I was wondering, Jen, if you could share a little bit about your perspective and then like any sort of barriers about having kids and being a woman in the sports medicine world.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my personal experience in working at this level has actually changed and evolved over the years and throughout my career. But to be completely honest, probably the first 8 to 10 years of my career, both in grad school and then as I was starting out, I had multiple people inside my organization, outside the organization, tell me that I chose my career over having a family. They told me I chose a career over having a husband or significant other, and they didn't know me. They never asked me my opinion or asked me what I wanted. And so that was actually really challenging as a young professional to navigate that, to be able to see these people that you trust and you respect and you viewed as mentors to say, oh, and by the way, you could only have one of these two things in your life and you've already made your decision, which I didn't listen to. So it was one where I was also be able to watch like my colleagues over time. We're looking at my colleagues as in the clinical staff, the office I share, about half of us have kids at this point, and there is that support and that community that understands that there you can have a career and you can also have a successful personal life, whatever that means to you. I am married. I do have a beautiful 2-year-old baby girl, and I'm still able to work my job and travel internationally when I choose to, and do all the things that fulfill me personally and fill my cup. But it was very challenging early on to be able to find that network and find those mentors and those individuals you can look up to who you can see be successful in their role, but also have that family dynamic that they're able to excel in and be able to grow themselves however that looks for them as well. So it definitely was a challenge early on in my career, but the longer I stayed in it, the more I networked and the more I met individuals who did have a family, who had the same goals or were able to actually accomplish that. And I was able to see it is attainable, and then it's kept true to myself and tuned out everybody else who wasn't supportive, and just made sure that the network around me was that supportive network.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm going to direct this next question back to Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims, when you're going along the pathway of being a physician in sports medicine, certainly at a high level, you may go through your own personal doubts. You may also hear external doubts or, haters telling you can't do it. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you, both, how you found ways to build up your own confidence, as well as maybe stave off some of the negative feedback you may have gotten along the way?
Absolutely. We've said a lot in this webinar about mentorship. I think another ship that we can speak highly about is friendship. And one of the things that has really helped supported me is friendship, whether it's my wife, who's my best friend, or others, leaning on them during those times of self-doubt. We talk about imposter syndrome, helps you get out of that negative space. I think it's important when you're in those moments, let's not pretend that we all don't have it to some extent, that when you're in that moment, you can let it breathe, but you got to cut it off at some point. You don't want to spiral and keep it going. So one of the things that I would say is it's important to have a high degree of self-confidence. You are where you are because you work to get there. Not many of us end up in a school or in a profession because we were lucky. We worked, you put the time in, you got recommendations, you studied, you took tests. So rely on that. Look at your CV, look at your resume. What have I done? What have I accomplished? And know that you belong where you are. So that high degree of self-confidence, talking to yourself, will go a long way. You have to manage the insecurities. You have to recognize that there will be people who are smarter than you, who can jump higher than you, who know more than you, all of those things. That's okay. But what they do doesn't necessarily manifest in your life in terms of how successful you will be. So be careful not to benchmark yourself against others too much. Set your goals, decide where you want to go, how you want to get there, and start to pursue that, and stay on the course that you set for yourself. But do, yes, find mentors who can help lead you along the way if you're starting to drift some. But manage the insecurities. Another thing, impulse control. Impulse control. Sometimes things will take longer than you expect them to, and it doesn't mean that you have to say, well, that's not for me, and jump off the pathway that you're on. Again, managing those voices, that impulsivity can go a long way towards helping you be calm and stable during very turbulent times, whether that's a grade that didn't quite go your way or a presentation, or maybe you didn't quite get the diagnosis right. Don't jump off the ship with one period of adversity. So I could say that those are some of the things that for me made a big difference, but I rely on my faith, I rely on my friends, and I rely on the compendium of information that I've studied, the friendship that I've had to help get me through those moments when I find myself with periods of self-doubt. I've convinced myself that if I'm in the room, I'm meant to be here. And now that I am here, I don't want to squander the time asking myself, why am I here? I need to make the most of the moment. And whether that is making a new connection with someone, striking up a conversation, or whatever the case may be, like I will seize the moment, and I'm not going to blow the 30 minutes, the 15 minutes, the hour that I'm in the room in a corner going, I don't know if I should be here. There are a lot of smart people here. There are a lot of people with a lot of titles and alphabet behind their name. I don't know if I should be here. That's not the time for that. If I'm in that room, it's time to maximize the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think that was great advice. My next question, I want to send back to Maurice. Maurice, being a massage therapist, you play an integral role in the sports medicine team, but I want you to discuss a little bit about the differences between when you're working on your own versus when you are working maybe at an international event where now you're working amongst the team, and if you can juxtapose the two.
Sure. One of the first things that I noticed as soon as I arrived at the OPC was the Olympic training facility was that you get more opportunities to work with para athletes, adaptive athletes. In private practice, you may see a person who has been, either they were born in a particular situation or they at some point succumb to a medical condition that required them to either have a limb amputated or they were in a car accident or something. And so the exposure to that space and that particular group of individuals out in public is I mean, you can't even compare it. Just being within the movement now, one of the first things I noticed is being at the table with a number of adaptive athletes where you're dealing with paraplegics or you're dealing with people that have visual uh, uh, issues that they can't either see 100% or they have a visually impaired to 50% or something along those lines. You're just dealing with a lot of different spaces. So one of the things that I noticed when I got to the OPC was that, you get a chance to work with adaptive athletes a lot more. And that's a space that, in my opinion, it's just not either touched on enough or talked about enough in spas and other facilities that might, either treat people like a physical therapy office. When they're treating people, you don't really get opportunities to work with that particular community. So that's one of the things that really stood out as soon as you asked that question, that stood out to me, that you just don't get the opportunity to work with adaptive athletes as much in private practice as you do once you align yourself with the movement or you figure out a way to get involved with everything that's going on. I think one of the things that could potentially help that situation is to volunteer at these types of events. Some of the triathletes that I work with that are in the adaptive space, they travel across the country to work at different or to compete in different races. So there are opportunities for massage therapists to get, for lack of a better way of saying it, reps in that space to be able to work with adaptive athletes. But that's something that really stood out to me, just the adaptive community and how much information just isn't known about that community in just your everyday clinic.
Awesome. Thanks, Maurice. And I like the cosign and shout out from Dr. Finoff in the chat as well. It's awesome working with the Paralympic athletes. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to direct our next question to Dr. Jerica Thomas. There was a question in the chat about how do you deal with burnout in your education and in your career? Would you be able to speak on that a little bit, given the sort of high level of athletes and care that you're giving?
Yeah, the workspace can be very extreme, from overcommitment to want to do things just right, to want to make sure that you are answering a call when there is a call, want to make sure that you're extending yourself to the athlete when they need it. Because being on call had me to a point where I was almost burned out. So for me, it was learning how to do a work-life balance. Making sure that I think somebody spoke on this earlier, but your community matters a lot. So making sure that you have people to pour back into you, because in this space and in this role, you are pouring constantly. You're pouring, you're pouring, you're pouring. And so for me, it's like I had to sit back and realize that I had to learn how to balance all I had. Yes, my job is to go above and beyond for my athletes to make sure that I am answering the call, answering the phone, giving to them, but also making sure that I have people around me to help pour back into me, and understanding that rest is necessary. Rest is what I educate my athletes on to help with recovery. And I should also rest and recover as well. But burnout is very real. I tell all of my mentees to make sure that they find something outside of your job to help you feel more like yourself, because you are more than just what you do. You are a whole person yourself as well. So treat it as such.
Yeah, it's really important to not only, take care of yourself so that you can be able to show up and provide for those that you're working with as well. So thank you for adding that. I wanted to ask the same question of Dr. Rode as well. How do you navigate burnout in your career?
I love that you asked me that question after Jerica just spoke. And even going back to something that Dr. Sims said earlier about spiraling, I can remember specifically there was an outdoor championship where I was mentally just spiraling. I was just burnt out between running my practice and traveling and working with athletes. And Jerica was like, "What's wrong with you?" Just her just checking me. And it helped in that moment. It sucked because, you are in your head, but it's like, hey, check in. You're here because you deserve to be here. You're here because you're knowledgeable. You're here because the athletes want you here. Let's work. And that is part of my community. She was part of my community when she was here. It was devastating, not just to track, but Orlando, which is where she was. But we build that community also outside of track. And I think it's different for chiros because, again, just like everybody else, there's no pathway. We do have to have additional training and education. And, something that Dr. Jackson said, it is hard to get in at times, especially, I'm 5'2", I'm very small. A lot of times they see me and they think either I'm, accompanying an athlete. They don't think that I'm the physician. So, that self-doubt, that size doubt, you have a shot put coming to get adjusted by you and you're like, ooh, that's a big guy or a football player or, an NBA player. And you have those moments when you doubt yourself, but then you remember your passion, you remember your education, you remember the test that you took. And I think you block that out and you show up. And, I definitely started showing up as my authentic self, unapologetic. I laugh a lot, I dance a lot. But that's also what the athletes loved. And that made me a better clinician. And during times when there was no athletes to be treated, I talked to other providers, other clinicians. Hey, how did you do that? What did you think of this? Like, just learning different trades and just sharing. It just made the experience more beautiful for me. So instead of looking at it like I'm leaving the office to go work somewhere else, I now look at it like I'm leaving the office, but, I'm going to get with, Dr. Glass and he's going to, yes, let me dance and have fun, but he also showed me this new trick or he poured into me or, next week I'm going to be back in the office and the patients are going to be there and be excited, or, bringing back home life and just sharing those experiences, kind of like putting those things in those buckets, but then also giving myself time to recognize that I am an extrovert introvert. So I need time to recharge. I need time to rest. I need time to spend with my dogs and with my girls, but just dropping something in each of those buckets so that I am still pouring, but also feel like, I don't have FOMO of my life passing by because I'm constantly working.
Thank you for that, Dr. Rode. I'm going to send a question back to Dr. Finoff. I think we all know what you do now, being the head of USOPC, but certainly that's not what you've always done. I'm curious if that had always been the long-term goal for you. And if so, if you could touch on others that are aspiring to get into the Olympic movement, maybe a word of advice on that in your role.
For sure, Chris. I actually do a whole leadership talk on this, and I'm just going to kind of say right off the bat, one of the things I think people should do is try to get experience in a variety of different fields, see what looks really good when you're choosing a profession, see what fits you and your personality, but then kind of set your course and say, what's my ultimate goal? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And then start talking to people, finding mentors, and looking at what is the path to get to that eventual goal. Because if you don't set that goal, then you're going to just kind of bounce around and life will take you where it will, as opposed to you getting and achieving your maximum potential. So for me, I wanted to work in elite sport, and I love Olympic and Paralympic sport. I had a lot of experience in that very early in my career with the Salt Lake Olympic Games happening when I was fresh out of fellowship. And I started working with the US ski team, and I realized that, boy, I would like to work at the pinnacle of Olympic and Paralympic athletics. And at the time, the USOPC did not have a physician leading their sports medicine team, a medical doctor, I should say. And so that wasn't something that I could put on my radar, but being a head team physician for a sport that would go to the games was an opportunity. So that's what I started working on from a career trajectory, and volunteered with the US ski team, got into their medical pool by meeting with their head team physician, filling out their application online. They sent me to some regional competitions, did a good job, sent me to some national competitions, did a good job, sent me to the under-23 World Championships, did a good job, went to regular World Cups, then the World Championships, and then eventually to the Olympic Games. It took me almost 15 years, though, to go through that process to get to the Olympic Games, but I was one of their head team physicians at that point. And to get into my role, there's a lot of different things that you need to do. I established myself as an expert by volunteering a lot with the medical societies, like American Medical Society for Sports Medicine, American Academy of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, running courses, lecturing, doing a lot of research, being in charge of a fellowship program, working in collegiate athletics as well as NGB, so Olympic sport athletics, and having a lot of administrative roles. And after I had collected all of these different skill sets, and then just also, I think a really big deal is being a nice person and caring about those that you're working with. And that opens doors. You can be the greatest physician ever, and if you're just not a good person, then you're going to struggle to be successful. And if you're a really good person but not a competent physician, you're also going to struggle. So I think that it's really important to be both. Be a good student, learn, be a good physician or whatever your profession is, and be a good person. And so eventually, with all of those skill sets and developing relationships, when this opportunity opened, I was positioned well to receive the job.
Thank you so much. Certainly gives us a lot of insight into all the work it does take to attain such a position. And thanks for all you do. I want to direct this next question back to Dr. Amawasi. There's a question in the chat kind of talking about unexpected life changes. And from your role doing sports psych, I'm curious, what kind of advice you would give to someone who has to experience unexpected life challenges in the realm of sports medicine? And maybe if you have an example of, a time in your life where something came up unexpectedly, how did you navigate that and still balance work along with that so that you weren't necessarily
I'm gonna do something a little different from everybody else. I'm gonna tell you about one of my failures. Oftentimes when we come on here, we share some of the great things that we did, and it kind of gives the best side of it. And I think that's good because we need to hear that. But I think the one of the hardest things is when you deal with things internally, and specifically as a psychologist, because this is when people come to us in times of grief, times of sorrow, and times of trauma, and you get to say, the information I'm giving, is it really helpful to the other people? And these are the things that brings on those kind of bright lights, those light that comes on. And one of the things that I've recognized is this, is sometimes we have the propensity, because we are so great at everything that we do, we put too much on our plate sometimes. And Dr. Finoff probably going to laugh because he just heard his speech. But one of the things that we do is we preach self-balance, about taking care of self when we do all of the things, when we say all of the things that we want people to do, but us as the helper sometimes fail to do that ourselves. And one of the things what you have to realize is this, if we don't model it and practice it, we become in trouble. If you look inside of the chat, I love Jenna, she was saying like, hey, I love my work-life balance. It is a little kind of crazy at times, but I have a village and I can control it. Well, before I understood that, I tried to put too much on my plate. I was the person who tried to be the Superman, who wouldn't say no, who wouldn't do anything. And it was a time where I experienced a significant death. And I thought that I could fight through it. And it's one of those times where you say, hey, they're going to see that even when I go through great tragedy, that I can put this on me and it goes through. But then what happens when you try to put that on, and then you find one of your athletes comforting you? And it's one of those things you don't want to put yourselves on, but if there's an outpouring of emotion that comes out organically, authentically, people understand that emotion. But what I recognized at that time was, hey, when something is too much, I have to be enough of a professional to say this is too much. Call on my colleagues, call on my teammates, has been stated in the column, and to make sure that we do utilize those things. And it's not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength. And more importantly, for the things that we do, it's a sign of the highest form of professionalism, because in the medical realm, we always think about what do no more harm. And what I recognized at that time, thankfully, in my failure, I did not hurt the person or anybody else that I was working with, but I always thought about what if. And that was one of those moments that highlighted for me that I had to be very careful of my emotions, where I'm at, making sure I utilize all of the other teammate resources that I have around me, so I protect the people that I work with.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's, like you said, it's not typical in this form to share that type of experience, so I appreciate it. As we're sort of wrapping up with the session for tonight, we wanted to hear from all of our panelists, just with maybe one last piece of advice or something that you truly love about what you do. And so we'll go down the list here, but maybe we can start with you, Dr. Hamwasi.
I'll keep it quick. My maternal grandmother from Chickasaw County, Houston, Mississippi, used to tell me all the time, the best way to heal yourself is to help others. And I think that's why all of us are in that profession. And so I just know when we give to others, that reciprocity come back. So make sure you keep giving, but make sure also in that giving you give to yourself.
Thank you. How about Dr. Gunter?
It is now officially a Zoom call because I was on mute while I was trying to talk, so I had to make sure we get that in before we all get off. I think, I mean, I certainly agree with what Kwaku just shared about you have to give to yourself before you can give to anybody else. But I also want to highlight the point of do good work, right? Like that is your calling card. Wherever you are in your career, just focus on doing the best where you are, because that builds and that grows over time. And so I think that's the one thing that I would leave the group with, is just do good work, whether it's free, paid, one person, 10 people, 100 people, virtual, in person, community service, a community group, professionals. Do good work, because that's what people will remember. So that would be my thing.
Yeah. Dr. Brown.
I'm so immersed in everyone's answers and also monitoring the chat that I might ask you to repeat the question so I make sure I actually answer it appropriately.
We're just having everybody just leave us with one little nugget for the audience and the attendees tonight. So something that you love about what you do, or just a piece of advice that you want to leave us with.
I will try and do both succinctly to say, I think one of the great honors of my life as a professional in this space is to bear witness to so many different and very personal stories that people are sharing with me and allowing me to accompany them in that path. Yeah, I think that's just something that I really appreciate in the work that I do, get to do. And then a piece of advice or something that I always try and carry with me is just being myself in the work that I'm doing and how I'm doing it, how I'm showing up in the workplace and with my peers, my colleagues, is just being genuine and authentic in who I am so that we're building those genuine relationships, trusting relationships, and yeah, hopefully learning from one another because we're sharing parts of ourselves. So I would just offer that too.
Thank you. We'll have Dr. Olivia Rowland next.
So I think when we think about professional sports or Olympic and Paralympic sports, everyone thinks of the grandiose pictures and the swag and all the cool stuff that you can find when you get into sports like this. But I think the best part and the piece of advice is build your interpersonal relationships, build your network, because that's the best part of the job, both from the client side, but also your team. So really building those relationships is the best thing that we've got.
Dr. Baltus.
Yeah, I would say that the one piece of advice, and I've answered in a way in the chat room, is finding that balance. Really important to figure out outside of work what makes you whole, what allows you to connect with a larger group of people that's beyond just sports medicine. I think that gives you perspective, and I think it allows you to associate with something that's larger than yourself, and also seek opportunities to continue to grow. Always pursue chances to improve yourself and learn from others. That comes from mentorship, both as a mentor and a mentee, and seek out those opportunities and nourish those interpersonal relationships that allow you to direct someone in the right path, but also allow you to gain that invaluable perspective to become an even better person and clinician.
Thank you. And then Dr. Thomas.
One thing I want to leave everyone here with is your gift makes room for you. So make sure you sharpen yourself, continue to get better. And also in these professional sports areas, always advocate for your athlete. Be an advocate. Speak up in spaces that they're not in or they can't be in to speak up for themselves. Teach them how to advocate and speak up for themselves. So that way, that's a skill that they can carry on, whether you're there or not. So that's what I have for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Nixon.
Oh my gosh, so many great jewels were dropped by. So many great jewels. I think advice I would leave is, I mean, you just want to be impactful, and being impactful is doing simple, doing what you're trained to do at the best of your ability and do it well. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, because I feel like I got where I am on my journey was not trying to BS people. Like if I didn't know, I use my team, and I think people respect you more when you do that. So yeah, just being impactful, just doing the best you can with your training. That's the best piece of advice I can give, and have fun with it. That's what I would say. Have fun with it.
Thank you, Nixon. Next, I'll have Jenna.
One piece of advice that I would give, very similar to what Nixon just mentioned, was I honestly view asking for help as a strength willing to know what you know, knowing what you don't know, and willing to ask others for help, showing that you're willing to collaborate, you're willing to learn, you're willing to grow, and that you know who to go to help find those answers is definitely will help you along the way to grow both personally and professionally.
Thank you. Then next we'll have Maurice or Mo.
Yeah, I mean, just what John said, like the mentorship, I really think that's really important. And one of the things that I ran into was the fact that there weren't a lot of people around me. So I had to pick someone and force myself under their wing. And so don't be afraid to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to try to get the help that you can or the help that you feel like you need. Make sure you seek out those mentors, even if you don't see them readily available in your immediate vicinity. Seek out people that you can reach out to. I remember when I first got with the WNBA, I reached out to some guys from the Miami Heat. Didn't even have anything to do with the WNBA movement, but they really helped me to acclimate myself. So you have to be willing to go into those uncomfortable situations and seek out the people that you need so that you can get the help that will help you to make progress, no matter how difficult or how uncomfortable it may be.
Thank you. And then next we'll hear from Alicia Glass.
So I'm going to take a mixture of one thing that Murray said that really kind of stuck with me and mix it with something that Dr. Gunter just said. Be ready when your number's called. I love that. But then also do a good job when you get that chance. And so I think my words of advice are, I think all of us were given that first chance. We all started with a resume that was blank. So once you're given that chance, crush it, do a good job, but then turn around and give others a chance. And I think that's where a space that a lot of us are in now. It's like we've built up, our areas of practice, and now we need others to help us to continue to deliver it. So give others a chance.
Thank you. And then next we'll have Dr. Waters.
So many good ones have been said already, but if I was to add something slightly different, I would say just be flexible and adaptable. Know that flight delays will happen, weather delays will happen, competition will run late. The treatment you thought would work won't work. The rehab you thought was perfect won't actually be. So just be flexible and adaptable, and with that, learn from others, and that's how you can adapt and flex well.
Thank you. And Dr. Rode.
I definitely believe in being flexible. But I would also say just being resilient, continuing to serve with passion. Dr. Finoff was saying this is a marathon for us. So once you get to the table, bring someone up with you, share that knowledge, go back to your small town community, your friends that also want to get in that field, and share with them. Because the athletes get excited when they see us. We're all representing their community in some shape or form. So making that room for someone else, I think is really great.
And Dr. Sims.
I just want to amplify the message of sponsorship. I think it's very important. Sometimes we're over mentored and under sponsored. So the message of sponsorship goes a long way. And my piece of advice is to remain a person of high integrity, especially in this day and age with generative AI. We're seeing increases in academic dishonesty and people using these tools and ways of representing themselves that may not be authentic. So do remain a person of high integrity. Don't burn bridges. You never know. Interactions today can resurface 5-10 years from now. And that can, stunt any progress that you could potentially have. Remember that people are always looking, people are always listening. And along that vein, keep your social media posts clean. Remember, the internet is not a private space. People do background checks, but they also do reputation checks. So just make sure that, all those things are buttoned up. If you're doing what you need to do, there's going to be no heavy lift on your side to make sure those things are where they need to be.
Thank you, Dr. Sims. We'll have Dr. Scott next.
So, two quick things. People have been asking about other opportunities. One of the ways that I started was as an undergraduate. There are a lot of universities where you can volunteer in the Department of Athletic Medicine. That was such a great place for me because I got to see and learn from everyone: athletic trainers, physical therapists, sports psychology, orthopedic surgeons, sports medicine doctors. So just keep that in mind. There's usually an application process, but more and more universities have that. The other thing I would say for those who are starting early in their career, say yes to everything. It kind of goes back to what Dr. Finoff said, right? It took him 15 years to get to a certain point. Say yes to everything. And I want to thank Monique Burton. I just started at HSS 10 years ago, and I was just moved to New York City, and she called and she said, hey, in 2 weeks, can you go and spend 2 weeks in Canada for Junior Pan Ams? And I said yes, and I dropped everything. I didn't have any furniture in my apartment. I dropped everything and I went. I think that's where I met you, Alicia, and I think had some interaction with Dr. Sims there as well. So just say yes early on in your career. So, and again, thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. We appreciate it. And next we'll have Dr. Finoff.
And there has been some amazing advice given tonight. I don't know that I have a lot more. One thing you might want to consider is just sports medicine is a tough profession. It's amazing. I love it. I wouldn't choose anything else, but it's a tough profession. Most games happen on nights and weekends. You are traveling a fair amount. Often it's volunteer. There's a lot of pressure in it. So make sure that you know what you're getting into. And at the same time, you meet amazing people. And it's not just the athletes. It's all of the people around the athletes. It's the coaches. It's the other healthcare providers. You get to meet people all over the country and all over the world. It is really incredible and a privilege to be in this. And I wouldn't choose anything different.
Thanks, Dr. Finoff. And the last of our panelists, Dr. Jackson.
Say the best for last, baby. Best for last. No, I'm just kidding. So two things, and I think Dr. Sims alluded to another term is allyship. You need somebody in the room talking for you, man. This is a tough business to crack into. All the stuff that people said, but if nobody gives you an opportunity, and usually that happens by having conversations in rooms that in the beginning of your career you are not allowed in. The other thing would just be to echo what John mentioned. Do not allow this to be your identity. I'm just going to pick on Dr. Sims because I saw his Lakers shirt. You not a Laker, right? I mean, in 30 years, nobody gonna care that you work with the Lakers, And so just don't let it be your identity. We work so hard and put so much into it to say yes, and all these things are good. Don't get me wrong, they're good. But don't let your identity be lost in that thing, right? Be able to say, hey, if the Lakers tell me to go packing tomorrow, I'm good, right? So I'll leave y'all with
that. Dr. Sims says Lakers in 5. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been amazing and just really inspired from hearing all of your stories and everything that you had to share. I'll turn this back to Dr. Burton.
Well, thank you, everyone. I just a huge thanks. I want to also really thank, there was actually a behind the scenes panel of people who were working on this, and a lot of gratitude to them. I won't say all their names, but they know who they are. And if you're listening, then thank you for all your help in getting this organized. Big thanks to AMSSM and the USOPC for bringing this together and collaborating on a really, really important and great topic. And I honestly just have I keep getting goosebumps throughout this whole time because I'm just so honored to know so many of you and to have had the opportunity to work with you, to learn from you, to grow with you, and to be mentored and call you friends. And I also am just so grateful to learning about new people that I hadn't met and all the inspiring things that you're doing, and that you took this time to be here and to be able to share your words of wisdom, share your pathway to inspire many people to be able to take their next steps into their careers. And so just an all around huge thank you to everyone. I'm so appreciative, and I feel like this is the start of something that we're going to just grow from and see what's next. And so one last kind of thing, if you are a panelist and you feel like you would like to share your contact information in the chat or with me later to pass on to people who may want to ask you more questions or see you as a mentor, please feel free to do that. And also, I guess have a really good rest of your night. And again, thank you so much for joining, and look forward to the next time.